What's up? What's up? It's John here from JJSC Tech, and I'm back again with another one. Happy Sunday. Hopefully you guys are good. Hopefully your families are good. And today we're going to talk about podcasts. Now, podcast is like the trending subject for like the past 3-4 years. But now it's much easier for you to create your own podcast and for you to get into the podcast business. So we're just going to talk about some of the equipment that you need to run a successful podcast, as well as, to set up a podcast. Running it is a little bit more involved, but there's two types of podcasts you can do. You can do the pre-recorded, and then you can edit and etc. And then you can get into the more technical stuff and stream podcasts. But I don't think we're going to get too much into that as much unless there's certain questions about that. That's a little bit more involved. So let's talk about podcasts and the equipment and how to like pre-record and etc. The equipment you need to pre-record and to have a successful, good sounding, good looking, good lighting podcast. So let's start. I think I'm gonna do this in like 2 tiers. So I'm gonna do like tier 1, which is like the beginner, like when you're first starting out, and then tier 2, which is a bit more advanced, and then you can use like tier 2 to like stream and record, so you can have like the best of both worlds. All right, so the first thing about podcasts is the audio, because video podcast is more of a thing now, but podcasts originally, I think I first got into podcasts around 2016, and it was mostly audio. So your audio has to be good. It has to be great, because even if you're recording, you can always repurpose the audio part and just put it on like Spotify, put it on whatever platform. So the audio must be good. So that's the first thing we're going to start with, which is the audio. Now, the first thing you need is a digital mixer. Yep, you need a digital mixer. So if you're now beginning, and let's say they're like you have 4 people for a podcast, or you want to max out at 4 people, you can get something like this, the Mackie DLZ Creator. So this is very similar to like your Rode your Rodecaster Pro, but this has a little bit more features. So you can go with either. But if you want to like size down or scale down, there is something like the Rodecaster Duo. So this is only for like 2 people. Depending on where you think your podcast is going to go, I wouldn't really go with this. But if it's only you and you're doing podcasts by yourself, no guests, no physical guests, then this will be good for you. If all your guests are like remote, then this will be good for you. So it's either this, or if you're doing in person and you're maxing out with 4 people, you can do a Mackie DLZ Creator or the Rodecaster Pro 2. If you're doing more than 4 people, that's where we're going to get into a more of an advanced type of setup, but we're not there yet. So after you get the mixer, you're gonna need cables, XLR cables. There are only 2 XLR cables that I use. Only 2. The Canary Star Quad. Let's do XLR. So the L4E6S. This or the Mogami Gold. Whoa. This is way more expensive. But I only use these 2. If I can't get Canaries, I'll go with Mogami. The reason being, depending on how you're running the cables. So for most of the time when you're doing the podcast, a lot of people don't put the mixer in front of the camera. It's mostly behind the camera, so you're going to have to get long enough cables running from the microphones to the mixer, which is behind the camera. So how you're running the cables, you might run up against power cables and etc. And you don't want any static or any interference in your XLR microphones, and that's why I buy these, because these 2 cables are shielded and it won't pick up any of those frequencies, and they're pretty durable as well. So if people are like stepping on them, they'll still work. So these are the 2 cables that I go with. So it doesn't make any sense you're buying an expensive mixer and an expensive microphone and cheaping out on the cables. Cables are very important. So that's the second thing. Cables was hot. And then after the cable, now you go with the microphones. So for beginner microphones, the Rode, what is it? The Pod Mic? Yeah, this right here. This is the Rode Pod Mic. I personally don't like this, but if this is all you can get, this is a good start. It's a great start. Not great. It's a good start. You have to do some EQing and etc. Using the Rodecaster or the Mackie DLZ, but you can get this sounding pretty good. So these are $99 a pop. That's pretty cool. If you want a better mic, you can go with the Shure SM7B, which is the iconic mic. But if these aren't in budget, because say these are $359, and if you got to buy 4 of them, that's a lot. So if these aren't in budget, then you can go with the Rode Pod mic. But if these are in budget and you don't like the Rode sound, another alternative is the Electro Voice. Electro Voice RE20. This is a great mic. I personally like this mic on my voice better than the Shure SM7B. Great mic. Great mic. So those will be your options for microphones. So after you get your microphones, the next thing to do is, well, definitely set it up, do some EQing and etc. Do some testing, make sure everything works, because if it doesn't work, you're shopping at a place like B&H, you got a 30-day return window, so you can exchange it and make sure everything works. So don't throw away your boxes. Keep all of that for 30 days, at least 30 days. So, yep. So after this, you go on to the video aspect. So you would do things. So the video is, it kind of depends on what look you want. You can go with Sony's, but you can also go with, if it's up to me, I would just use Reds, but I understand that Reds are not really for this and it's kind of out of budget. I just like the red look, especially on darker skin tones. But if you even have like the Sony ZV-E ones, A7 4s, you can always get like a program like Ecamm, and then you can play with the color. You can probably put a LUT on there as well in Ecamm, and you can make it look pretty good. So let me see. I think Sony is coming out. Or some people also use like the FX30s for their podcasts, which is decent. I think these lines of Sony, which is like the prosumer, these lines of Sony is kind of like expensive. How much is the FX3? Full frame. See this? $3,000, almost $4,000 for FX3. I think that's too expensive, me personally, but to each his own. So there's the Sonys, and you can get like the Sony G Master lenses. I am not a Sony guy, so I FE, that's a G Master. Okay, GM, yeah. So for the wide shot, I'll probably do like a 24. And for the two close-up shots, anything between a 50 millimeter, maybe an 85 millimeter. But with the 85 millimeter, you got to like go back a bit because you don't want it all in the person's nostrils. So yeah, 50 to 85 for the close-up shots. That's if you're doing like a 3-camera podcast. But for the wide shot, definitely like a 24 to 35, but I wouldn't go higher than a 35. So let's do Sony ZV-E1. How much is the ZV-E1? ZV-E1 is 1,800? What? How much is the ZV-E10? I don't like the ZV-E10. Okay, it's more beginner. More beginner. I mean, if the other Sonys are out of budget, you can do a ZV-E10. But you must have good lighting. You must have great lighting. because this sensor is an APS-C sensor and it's not that great of a sensor. So your lighting must be top notch so it doesn't look cheap. And with this uses an L mount, so you can also put like a good lens on this as well to get more light in, and you'll be fine. But I would advise to get 3, if you're doing 3 cameras, get 3 of the same cameras, especially if you're recording and editing in post. Try not to mix and match, because your editor, even if you're the editor, your editor will hate you because of how much work they have to do to mix and match. Get the same camera. Get the same camera. And so you got a budget for that. So if you're doing Sony, this is the way to go. ZVE10, ZVE1, FX30, FX3 for more like the higher up prosumer type of camera. So that's it for Sony. I'm not a Sony guy. So if you're doing Canon, let's see, you can do the Canon R50 for the budget. Wow, R50 is $100 more. Oh, it comes with the lens. Yeah, same amount. So this is the budget, R50. This is the same as ZVE10. Have good light. You must have good lighting. The colors won't be 100% accurate, same as a ZVE10. Have good lighting. We're going to get to that next. So you can get something like this, and then you can avoid kit lenses. Definitely avoid kit lenses. Lenses. What? All right, B&H. All right, cool. 70-200 is a good lens, but it's not needed for this podcast. This is a great lens, 24-70. Hold on. Okay, 24 1.4. This is good. This is good for the wide shot. So if you get this for the wide shot, and then you get 2 35s. No, you get this 24 or a 35 for the wide shot. And then for the 2 side shots, which is the 2 close-up shots, you can get either what was I saying for the Sony? 50-85, a 50 or 85 prime. You don't need zoom. And I personally don't use autofocus for podcasts because the people aren't moving as much. It's not like fast action sports or something. They aren't moving as much. They're sitting still for the most part. So you really don't need autofocus. You can set it on manual focus. Just put the f-stop at like a 2.8 because these apertures, they go from f1.4 to f14. F2 is a sweet spot. You don't need to go below f2. You really don't, because that's gonna reduce the focus point. And if the person moves back and forth, they're gonna be blurry, not blurry, and etc. So a good 2.8 is pretty good. If you got good lighting, you can come all the way up to like a f4 and you'll still be really good. And so that's the Sony. That's good. So that's if you want to do beginner cameras. Not FX3. FX3 is not a beginner camera. It's more like a medium tier prosumer camera. If you want to get a cinematic looking podcast, which has like a better color science, better sensor, more movie look, I mean, lighting is going to play a huge, lighting is really going to be a huge aspect of that look. But the camera, you can start out with a Blackmagic. How much is a Pixus? I think the Pixus might be cheaper. Yes, wow. The Pixus is cheaper than the FX3. Wow, that's crazy. And you have a 6K sensor, full frame. You have OpenGate, but you don't need to use OpenGate. But the big thing is, if you're recording, you're going to get Blackmagic RAW, which is much better for an editor. So he can really dial in those colors and etc. if you're doing the post-production aspect of the podcast. So this is good. This is a good beginner camera. Above this, it's up to you. Because remember, you have to buy 3 of these. So don't buy 3 Aries for a podcast. If you're doing a podcast with an Arri Alexa, please put your comments in the comment section and put a link, because I want to see what that looks like. And you're going to come to a point of diminishing return. You're going to spend like 70% more money just for like 5% gain. So this is good. This is pretty good for a cinematic look. So you have Blackmagic RAW, which is really good, and you can put like a cine lens on here and you're going to get a great look. So, okay, that's it with the cameras. So with the cameras, you need to find a way to connect the cameras to the computer. And that's where you get something like the Blackmagic ATEM. Now, this depends on what you want to record or how you want to record it. The switcher is good for just recording everything into the computer, or you can just record directly into the Blackmagic ATEM. But remember, these ATEMs, not this one at all. You need something like the ISO. The reason you need the ISO is because they record each channel or each input separately. So if you have 8 cameras, more than 4 or how much ever cameras you have, it'll record each of those inputs separately. That way, when you go to edit, you have all of your cameras, all shots, the entire for the entire podcast, and then you can cut and edit all you want. So there is that. So if you're doing the prosumer cameras, like the Canon R50 and the Sony ZV-E10, all the way up to the FX30, as well as basically all cameras except the Blackmagic. If they have an HDMI, you would use something like this, a HDMI switcher. There's also another thing like the Rodecaster Video, but I personally don't like that. Not that it's a bad switcher. It's pretty good because you have like a Rodecaster Duo built into it. So you have that all-in-one thing right there. Let me just go to it. This. I had this on my channel. I returned it. There was quite a few bugs in it, as you see. You purchased this on September 26, 2024. I definitely returned it. So this has a Rodecaster Duo built in, and it has 4 HDMI inputs. So this is good if you want like the all-in-one solution. You can record internally as well. So this is a good solution if you're starting out and your budget isn't as big. It's kind of expensive, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. I must say, it's pretty good. Now, if you're just doing it by yourself, a podcast by yourself, and you only have the maximum of guests is going to be 2, then yes. But if you have more than 2 guests, which most podcasts have more than 2 guests, then this is not really going to work. But this all depends on you. Depends on your vision, depends on your planning, how you expect your podcast to be. The preamps in this is the same as the Rodecaster, so you're going to get good preamps. It's just the video section can be a bit confusing, but there's plenty of videos on YouTube about how to set this up and how to operate this and etc. Yeah. Me personally, I like the Blackmagic. Oh, and another thing, this can do 1080p, 60 frames per second. So if you want to record 4K, you can't use this. You can't even use this either. You'll have to use something like a ATEM Constellation 4K. Yeah, like this, the 1ME version. But if you want to do 4K, this only has SDI ports. So you're going to have to do something crazy like buy a whole bunch of converters just to do 4K. Now 4K is a lot. But if you don't want to do the switching at the computer and using a program like Ecamm and bringing it all in and just making one file, then you can just record internally to the cameras and then do all of that stuff in post. Then you don't need any of these switchers. So yeah, that seems to be a lot. So if you are getting like those prosumer cameras, like something like the ZV-E10, you're going to need HDMI cables, good HDMI cables. Here are some of the brands. Okay, all right. I think my mouse is dying. Let me switch over to this. Great. Stuff like this, I kind of stay away from. I would use something like, what is it? What's it called? Kramer? Elvid is pretty good. Elvid is fine. You can do things like Elvid and Kramer. And there's one more. NTW. Now I've went through a whole lot of HDMI cables in all the years I've been doing live streaming and etc. And these 3 brands never failed me. Elvid, Kramer, and NTW. So these 3 brands are pretty solid when it comes to reliability and durability. So I would go with these 3 brands. Me personally, I mean, you can go with whatever you want, but I've went through a lot of HDMI cables. And these never broke on me. I'm not saying it won't break on you, but I'm saying that you have a higher chance of them lasting. So these were the HDMI cables that you would run from the camera directly to the switcher. If you're using the switcher method, if you're recording internally, just get a good card, a reliable SD card, SanDisk or ProGrade, even Angelbird. Those are good, reliable cards. So yes, so that is the camera. Am I missing anything from the camera? So you got the camera, you got the switcher, you got the lens. Yeah, so that's it. Now let's go to lighting. So lighting is very important. Very, very important. So for lights, you don't have to go airy when it comes to lighting. You don't have to get a sky panel, depending on your budget. But if you have a budget for an airy sky panel, you shouldn't be watching this video, you know? You're onto bigger and better things in life. So let's do something like a Amaran. Yeah, like these Amaran COB lights. These are pretty decent. Now, since they're 200x and the output is 5500 lumens, they will have to be pretty close, and you have to get like a pretty big softbox. Reason being, you don't want this harsh light on people's skin. And let me talk to the people who are a darker skin tone, like myself. Get a bicolor light. The reason being, a warmer light looks much better than a regular daylight light on our skin tones. So to my colored people out there, get a bicolor light. Please get a bicolor light. You'll thank me later. Now, the bicolor lights, they have less outputs. So you have to pay attention to the LUTs. So this is 33,000 at 3.3 feet. It depends on your placement and how big your space is as well. So let me show you. Let me show you what I did for a podcast that I am setting up.
All right, so this is a second recording, and this is when the light is at...
All right, hold on. Let me do this right quick.
All right, so this is a second recording, and this is when the light is at 65%. The previous test was when the light was at 71%. So...
Okay, so this is me just messing with the layout and messing with the light for a podcast that I'm currently setting up. So there are these Rode pod mics. So these are the same pod mics that I showed you in the beginning. I don't like them, but the client already had them, so I might as well utilize them. Plus, they're running into a Rode podcast. I could never remember this name. The Rode podcast, Rodecaster. Yes, the Rodecaster Pro 2. So the Rode pod mics are running into the Rodecaster Pro 2. Jeez. Yeah. But the good thing about the Rodecaster Pro 2 is that they have a preset for the Rode pod mics, because, you know, it's the same company. So I just picked the presets and I did some EQing and etc. in order for it to sound a bit decent. Again, I I don't really like these mics, but they came out pretty okay. Also, there's like an AC unit in this location, so that's why the noise gate is running pretty aggressively.
The light is at 65%. The previous test was when the light was at 71%. So let's go. Let's do this angle first.
So this is the first angle. All right. So remember when I told you don't mix and match the cameras? These cameras are being mixed and matched. The two cameras, these two close-up cameras are the ZVE 10s, and the wide shot is like a Sony A7 IV. So I'm trying to do the best to match them, which is difficult, but as I said in the beginning, get the same lens or get the same camera
All right, let's do this
for
angle right
your podcast. You aren't hearing me when I'm speaking into these mics because I had it on mute. Yeah. So I got to turn down I have to position the light a bit different because this color is a bit different and it's a bit hotter.
And this is
But as you see, my skin tone doesn't look washed out. This one is a bit darker. If I have to position the light and turn it down a bit in order for the skin tone to look a bit like that instead of so overexposed. But yeah, that's it. So in the culture infinity bars and the main key light, I'm using like a massive softbox. No, a massive diffuser. So let me see. Do I have? Hold on. I think I have the video of me showing. Okay, yeah. Hold on. Let me get this video. Let me get this video and show you guys what the behind the scenes look like. All right, let me drop this video. Boom. So this is the Aperture 600X, and so this is the massive softbox. So this is just a magic cloth, and I have it at the bottom of a C-stand, the actual light, and it's bouncing off of a floppy into this huge diffuser, which is a magic cloth, and that is lighting up both subjects. Yeah, and that's it. I just turn off the two fluorescent lights because that will mess with the color. But I have to do a bit more adjusting of the key light so both subjects are lit equally. But yeah, lighting is very important. Lighting is massively important. So with the lights, you can, let me go back to this. You can do something like 2 of these, depending on the space that you have. And you can also get like soft boxes. Like 2 of these massive soft boxes. But the only thing with the soft boxes is that you need a bit more space. Now you see that space was kind of confined, so I didn't have room to put these massive soft boxes. So the Booklight works the best in this location. So it's just solving particular problems. But if you do have enough space, you can have like 2 of these, 1 on each host, or you can get something like a lantern. Diffusers, soft boxes. Right here. A lantern, and this lights up everything. Now, the thing about podcasts is most of them are high key. So it's kind of like a bit flat. So there isn't like a whole bunch of like shape to the subjects in a lot of podcasts. And people like that look, you know, people like that. So it just depends on what you want to do. But lighting is very important. And you must have key lights. So for key lights, I use these Aputure. I mean, hair lights. What am I talking about? For your hair lights, that would be for the key light. For the hair lights, can't spell. Infinibar. I went with these. So there's the Amaran versions of these. And I think they do come with soft boxes as well. So it isn't that harsh. So the hair light isn't that harsh. Again, the reason I went with these is because of the space. The space isn't that huge. So I had to do some MacGyver stuff, you know, and get like some clamps and attach the hair light to the clamp and attach it onto the ceiling. Yeah. And then after that, you can get tubes. Things like the Amaran tube lights and etc. Now, when it comes to lights, I would say stick with the same brand. Find one brand and just get all the lights with that same brand. Reason being, you can just use like an app and control all of the lights. You don't really want to interchange and mix and match brands because it can be a bit of a headache if you're troubleshooting, and if something like goes wrong with the light, just get the same brand. You'll thank me later. So yeah, so that's the light. I mean, you can go more in depth with this, and if you have the budget, you can get like a spotlight and get like a gobo and shine like a specific pattern on the background. You can get practicals and like lamps and etc. And then you can get smaller, let's see, Aputure bulbs. Things like these, the B7Cs. You can control these. You can put them into like lamps and etc. And then you can control these and change the color and have those practicals. You can do a lot with lighting, but lighting is very important. The most important thing is the audio. The second most important thing is the lighting, and then the cameras. So those are the three things you really need to focus on when it comes to this podcasting. Now, I know in this video, you had a whole bunch of things, ton of information, a lot of things to choose from, but focus on those three core aspects of the podcast: the sound, the lighting, and the audio. The most important thing is the sound, because no matter what type of space you're in, the sound will remain the same. The sound will remain the same. No matter what type of equipment you get for the sound, if it's the Rode Pod mics or the RE20s, the Mackie DLZ Creator, the Rodecaster Pro, your sound will remain the same as long as you EQ it and set it properly. That's good to go. Now, the things that are variables are the lighting and the cameras, because that all depends on the space you're in. So that will dictate the type of lenses you get and how many lights you get, and etc. So yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot. So if you have more than 4 people, if you're like recording audio for more than 4 people, you can get something like this, a MixPre 10, which has 8. It has 8 inputs, and you can record each person using this. Now, you have to spend more time in post editing each person's audios and etc. But this is one of the good avenues to go. I think there's also the Zoom F8. Was it F8? Yeah, this is also really good as well. This should also have 8 inputs. Yep, 8 inputs. Oh, you can't see anything. Tripping. So this is the Zoom. This is the Zoom F8. 8 inputs. And if I just do backspace, this is the MixPre 10. So this is only if you have like more than 4 people. If you have 4 people, and if you're maxing out at 4 people, the Mackie DLZ Creator as well as the Rodecaster Pro 2, those are more than enough for you. So if you want to get a bit more high tech and level up your audio, you don't really want to record, or you don't really want to edit in post, you can get something like an Apollo, like the Apollo. This is the X8P, and you see it has 8 inputs, and this has 8 preamps on these inputs. So you can do things like, hold on, let me show my screen, because let me get the Apollo. Boom. So get something like the Apollo. It will have 8 inputs, and you can just configure the inputs with the plugins. And after you do that and you get everything sounding great, you can just record. You can just record in your computer, and your audio will be great. You don't have to do any type of post editing when it comes to the audio, because that's what I'm using right now. when I'm recording any videos and I'm using this computer, I don't have to do any editing of my audio because it's already set up right here. You see, I have the Unison preamp and I have all of my plugins right here already. And my levels are good, so I literally just have to record and that is it. No posts. So in order to get to this stage, you're going to have to do a lot of pre-work. So you would have to go through each channel, all 8 channels, or you can just configure one that sounds good and just copy the settings to all 8 channels. And after you do all of that, you're pretty much good to go. You're pretty much good to go. Boom, let me move you out the way. Boom. Yes. So that will be the option. Yes, it's an expensive option, but again, it depends on your plan for podcasts, how many episodes that you plan to do, and etc. I mean, there are other levels above this, like a full mixer that you would have in like a venue or a church and etc. Or if you plan to do radio. But this, I was about to say this is a good consumer alternative, but this is not really consumer. This is still in the pro section. This one person can more manage this than a massive mixer and etc. This is much easier because all you have to do is set up each channel and then just record on your computer, and you don't ever have to really do any mixing or anything like that when it comes to this. So yeah. That's kind of like the basics of podcasts. Getting the sound right, and everything else will follow after that. Because remember, if someone is watching your podcast, yes, the information that you're telling the people is important, but the sound is very important because that's how the people hear you. No matter if you're doing just the audio or the video. If you're just doing the audio, then you definitely got to focus on your sound. But sound first, lighting second, video third, and you should be good to go. Yeah. So if you have any questions, just put it down in the comment section, which is under that like button, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. That's one of the fastest ways to reach out to me. Leave a comment and I definitely will respond to you. So yeah, that's about it. If you guys have any other questions about certain aspects of podcasting, whether it's the microphone, the cabling, lighting, video, let me know. But if you don't, I'm gonna catch you guys in the next one. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Peace.